Hello, welcome. My name is Steve. I'm a sales support engineer at Sony, and today we're going to be talking about Content Manager version 2.6.0 as it relates to the optical disc archive. So as far as downloading the application, you'll go to www.sonycreativesoftware.com, go to the downloads link, software for Sony equipment, and this is where all the professional software is located. You'll go to Optical Disc Archive, and what you'll be needing are the Optical Disc Archive software. So you'll download that, and then you'll also download Content Manager. We'll take a quick look at what that looks like. So you'll receive a key on a piece of paper packed with your ODA drive when you purchase it, and that software key will be used to enable the software. You'll first download the software, so you'll click the download link, and then the system. So when you click the download link, we'll go to the actual place for the software. So Content Manager is supported on both Mac OS and in Windows, and you'll download the correct version. And release notes and application help, a standalone application help document is there, although that is embedded in the application also. All right, so download, install is pretty straightforward, and when you launch it, it'll ask you to enter your license so that it can be used. Let's take a quick look at the release notes. I want to just point out a few things of importance here. And first of all, Content Manager is a content management system designed for the optical disc archive system and the ODA drive. It's for archiving specifically to that device. So Content Manager version 2.6 is made to work with the ODA software version 3.4. ODA software is basically the USB 3 driver for the ODA drive, so those things have to be paired together at the correct software versions. And main functions about the Content Manager: it's for archiving audiovisual materials, right, to shelf manage optical disc cartridges. So we'll see there's a concept of the offline cartridge. So that would be a cartridge on the shelf, but you'll still be able to view directory structures of the cartridge and proxy video and thumbnails for the offline media. So you can search and retrieve the archived contents. You can of course browse and search the online proxy video and thumbnails for your self-managed ODCs. And we do have a face recognition search available that's supported in Windows only. It's not supported on the Mac, but there is a speech recognition feature in here also. So that is what Content Manager is. New features in 2.1 is first support for El Capitan and Safari 9 browser. And then this lists previous versions and what they added. So let's scroll down to a few notes on upgrading. There's a note, we think it's best practice to back up your database before the upgrade. There are tools to do that in the Content Manager. So just a couple of notes to single out here. There's a fairly long list of notes on use that you should be aware of, so read through that in detail. But let's see. What I want to point out first is that when you're performing operations, right, on files managed by this application, you would want to use this application exclusively and not go to Finder or not go to Windows Explorer to access files. So it's best that you let the software manage accessing files so that there's no conflict between the Content Manager software and the operating system. And then one more important note, when there's less than 3 gigabytes left on a volume or device used with this application, we sort of have a safety where we will stop operations so that there's no risk of losing data, and you would need to free up disk space. All right. Another note: we recommend using Catalyst Browse for playing back archive files directly off the cartridge. So that's a unique feature with ODA, is that since it mounts to the OS as a USB drive, you can also play the file without actually downloading it first. So we recommend using Catalyst Browse, and that's also available as a download from the Sony Creative Software website, and that application is a free install. It does have to be registered, but it's a free install. Another important note here about administrative passwords. So when you do install the software, be sure you put in a mail notification setting, because there is no other way to reset the admin password short of a complete uninstall of the application. After installation, put in the admin mail setting so that if you do forget the password, there's a way to recover it. All right, so I've got Content Manager installed. I open up Chrome browser, point it to localhost port 8080. So Content Manager is a web application. So what you've installed is a Tomcat Apache open source web server on the host computer, and you're using a Chrome browser to access that server. We recommend not running any other web-based server applications on that same host computer. Well, when you log in for the first time, this will prompt you for a admin password. So I've set that up already, and this is the web GUI. So let's go to full size to take a look at this. So in Content Manager, you've got 3 main pages: an archive page, a browse page, and a search page, and we're looking at the archive page. So within the archive page, we have a desktop area, so we'll be navigating to different locations on the local computer or on any shared network folder. We do have a watched folder feature for importing files. So that's the desktop. There is a pull down menu here for items related to the desktop menus. We'll be going through that. To the right is the library pane. So in the library pane, we're showing you any online cartridges. So if there's any ODA drives with a cartridge in them, it'll show it as a online cartridge. And then I have offline cartridges here too. So I have several cartridges that are offline or on the shelf. So I've already ingested files, archived them, removed them from the drive, put them on the shelf, but the local host computer keeps proxy and directory structures and metadata for those offline cartridges. So for example, this ODC 1000, I have several folders, and within those folders, I've got my files. If I decide I need a file, I can go back to this cartridge and retrieve it. This is the library pane, and then below that is a job area. So every time I archive or retrieve, Content Manager will create a new job, and one by one it will execute the jobs that I've requested. So it'll just give me a status of what's going on. All right, so that's those are the 3 main areas of the application. There is a help for the application. There is a settings page also, and we should probably take a quick look at some of the key settings for the application before we get started. In settings, I've got several sub pages. So in my settings, it's language, types of files to display, so you can filter certain files to either show or not show. This is where you can change your password after you're logged in, and then you can put in your email settings here also. So that's my settings. In the metadata tab, this is metadata that's shown in two tabs on a in a player window. So there's a primary tab and a secondary tab. You can arrange the metadata for what's important to you. So so certain items, if you wanted this audio or video type of metadata to be on the secondary pane, you can move it over and have it show in the secondary and not clutter the primary area. So you can also order the list of metadata with the up and down arrows if you wanted to again rearrange what's important up top. So and as you can see, in blue is system metadata, and in white is user metadata. So you can create custom metadata fields for your use. So users and groups. So being a web application, more than one person can log into this to browse the archive. Only the person logged into the host computer locally can actually archive, logging into the computer that's physically attached to the ODA drive, but anyone else can browse the proxy over the network. So you can create, add users and give them authority to be either administrator or user. And then further, you can create groups of people and organize users as far as a group goes. So in the archive tab, we have MD5 checksum that can be computed and saved. So that's normally off by default, but you can turn it on as an extra check to ensure the file's integrity. There's a restrict disk spanning option. So this will restrict the saving of files across disk boundaries. So this would keep files on a particular disk, there being 12 disks in a cartridge. It would make file retrieval a little faster because the file wouldn't be spanned across 2 disks. So the downside of that would be that you would be not using the cartridge as efficiently as you would if you would allow the file to be spanned across disks. So it's an option there. So if you're doing a lot of restores, it might be something to consider. If you're not doing a lot of restoring, then you want to optimize the storage on the cartridge and use it as most efficiently as you can. So another option for enabling strict file comparison when retrieving, that's also an option, and so that's using the MD5. So this is important, cache folder. So some users that I've talked to will have a RAID drive connected to their host computer, and you might want to put both the cache folder and the metadata folders on that RAID drive. But that's really personal choice as far as whether everything's on the host computer or not, but you can set that location over here. Okay, and you would want cache large enough to cache the largest file that you'll be archiving, because we need to cache the file when we go through the process of generating a proxy for that file. Watch folder setup is here. We'll take care of this separately. Cartridge name, the base name is ODC, but you can change that prefix to whatever you want. Okay, so that's the archive page. Maintenance page, there's a terminate and start services here. So being a web service, there's one other application from Sony that does use a web service, and that is called Optical Disk Archive Filer. So you need to terminate Content Manager services if you were to use the Filer application. Just a kind of a status of the system, what's going on. This is giving you some information here. Restoring and backing up of the database is done automatically on the schedule, and you can set that schedule and set the number of preserved files. And again, here you may choose to back up the database to your RAID drive or to the local drive. So you can save that in the location of your choice. All right. And then should you need to restore a database, restore a full database of Content Manager, we'll say you're moving your Content Manager over to another computer or sharing your database with another user, you can restore that from one of the backups. And then this is what's used for importing or exporting of the database. So I can choose to export the database for all of the cartridges or just one of the cartridges in this area, and then I choose an output folder of where to send that. But and then this is the import that would be used if I were to bring the database of another user's Content Manager over to another computer. And there's a cleanup database for the MySQL database, and this is done automatically in the background. So a lot of these things are done automatically, right, in the background, off hours. So it's important that you set your computer not to sleep, because this can interrupt some of those processes. So be sure you go to your control panel in either your Mac or your Windows machine and set the hard drive to never sleep, so that the system can do its tasks. And then at the very bottom, log collection. This is used just for diagnostic purposes. If there's any issues, our support people might ask you to collect logs, and this gathers about 5 or 6 logs from around the system and packages them up into one zip file. All right, that's the maintenance page. And finally, the notification page. These are the notifications that you get as archive jobs are completed. I have an accountant here, and I'll get text messages periodically as this system completes archive jobs. All right, so that's our settings page. All right, so let's get started with a few workflows in Content Manager. I'll go to full screen mode, and there are 3 basic ways to archive clips. 3 basic workflows. One is drag and drop, where we're dragging from our desktop to our library. There is also a modification of drag and drop, which is called using a placeholder. So we'll go into that in more detail, but the placeholder is accessed from the desktop, an open placeholder. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll go through the watch folder workflow. So we haven't created any here yet. I'll create a watch folder and show you the workflow with that. So first, the most direct one is drag and drop. So I'll go to a USB 3 drive I have connected, and I select a source. So I will select the demo clip folder. All right. So I'm in my demo clip folder. I have a source, and then I have a destination. Destination is basically the root of this cartridge, unless I go into one of its folders. But just to show you a simple drag and drop, I can drag this JPEG, drag it, and then drop it at the root of the folder. I'll get this dialog asking me to give this archive job a title. This will be a searchable piece of metadata. I'll just say this is my single file example. I want to have the options here to create a periodic thumbnail every 10 seconds, create a proxy video if it applies, and use face recognition if it applies. So I click archive, and you'll see down below here a job is started, single file example, and that archive is started. Another example of drag and drop would be if I had a group of files. We'll say I have let's see, I already have some a GoPro folder up here already. We'll say I want to create another folder. So from my library, from my pull down, I can create a folder, and I can say this is going to be GoPro 2. So I create a folder called GoPro 2, and I want to use that folder as my destination, and I want to put my folder of 3 files in that GoPro 2 folder. So I just drag and drop this the same way. I would rename this so I can track the jobs. This will be my GoPro example. Okay, and I'll also ask for metadata to be extracted. So that job is started. So in different ways we can take single files or multiple files going to either the cartridge root or one of the subdirectories within the online cartridge. So note I've got one drive connected, one online cartridge. I have several offline cartridges or cartridges that are on the shelf. So I can go back to these cartridges at a later time. Alright, so that is drag and drop. Next is a placeholder. I'll start by opening a placeholder. And what this is just a kind of a scratch pad kind of calculation for files. So we'll say I'm interested in archiving this folder called MXF. So if I drag it to the placeholder, it'll tell me, it'll take the files in here and give me a total, telling me this is 576 megabytes worth within that folder. And if I had another folder here, we'll say this GoPro folder, I can add that, and that brings me up to 824 megabytes, and I can add more files and folders to my placeholder so that I can total up what I'm going to be writing to the cartridge, and this will just help me manage writing the cartridge, getting the most out of a particular cartridge. So from here I can drag and drop from the placeholder to the cartridge, whether it's shift selecting all of the files and folders or some of them. So as an example here, let me go to my sample footage too. No, I think it's better that I just create another folder, and I'll just say this is my placeholder example. And now that I have a placeholder example folder, I select that as my destination, and I'll say I just want this MXF folder to go there. I'll change my name. Placeholder example with the same metadata extraction options, and that job starts. And then if I decide I want this GoPro folder to go somewhere else, I can select that and start that job also. Alright, so that's an example of placeholder. And then we'll go through watch folder now, and when I finish watch folder, we'll go through looking back at all those files that I archived. So in watch folder, I've got to set up a shared folder that's accessible to other users. So in that, I'll go to settings, to archive, to watch folder, and I'll click add since I don't have any set up here yet. So I'll give this a name. I'll call it Steve watch folder. And then it's looking for a path. Now I have a couple of general purpose folders on my desktop, and what I'll do is navigate to my desktop, and desktop, and I'll go to my test folder. Alright, so I've got my test folder selected as my watch folder. And now I click OK. So I've got that Steve watch folder is the name, test folder is the actual name on the Mac. So this is it's not a shared folder, it's just a folder on my local Macintosh. It can also be a shared network folder so that others can drop files into this. Alright, so I have my watch folder now set up. So now I want to select, what I do is select a destination for this watch folder. And what I'm going to do is set another folder. And this might be my edit room. So I've set my destination as Steve's edit room, So I need to select that this way. So I have Steve's edit room selected here. And what I'll do is drag and drop my watch folder, and the destination will be Steve's edit room. This will be my watch folder example. And again, I want the same metadata options for this. So now you'll see the watch folder icons changed. So it is being watched. That process of dragging and dropping it now activated the watch folder, and anything that drops into that watch folder will be automatically copied to the Steve edit room destination. To use it, all right, I have to go back to the operating system. So we'll switch back over, right, to Finder, and I have my test folder here. So all I have to do is drag and drop whatever I want to archive. So we'll go back to my Steve Media. I'll go to my MXF folder. We'll say I take three of these files, drag and drop them into my test folder. They're copied there. So if I look at the test folder, they're there, and what happens is after they're copied, the system will delete the files. So the test folder will always be empty when the copy is complete. If I go back, Content Manager, you'll see that the watch folder detected 3 files. Those are being copied, and when those are finished copying, it'll continue to monitor that folder. That's how the watch folder works. So I could set up several watch folders with several destinations simultaneously. So if I had 2 or 3 edit rooms and I asked the editors to archive their own material, they could have their own watch folder and their own subfolder on a cartridge for archiving purposes. So that's an example of a watch folder. So going back, we did a few archives. Let's take a look. Let's browse. We've been looking at the archive page. If we take a look at the browse page now, we can browse either a cartridge on a cartridge by cartridge basis, or on an all file basis. So just by all files, or filter by file name, file type. So we can browse by file type in particular. So I can just say, just show me all of the JPEG files, and it'll filter all the files in the Content Manager's database, regardless of the cartridge being online or offline. So there are several ways to browse. Let's go back to cartridge, since I'm interested in what I wrote to this cartridge. So you'll see at the root of the cartridge was that JPEG that I wrote to it. I did the GoPro 2 example, so I had a folder within that, and I've got a few files there, a few videos there, and then also from the placeholder example too, I copied the MXFs. So I have several MXF files there. If we click on this, it'll open up a player, which will give us some file details, some basic metadata in a primary tab, secondary metadata in a secondary tab, and then a related files, which we haven't gone through yet, but we'll go through how to associate files as groups. If I wanted to edit metadata here too, I can click the edit button and add an alias to this. I can add a description to this, and then save that as metadata. So the metadata and the proxy that we're viewing live on the host computer for Content Manager. So it's just low-res proxy. If you want to back up the proxy and metadata to the cartridge, that's also possible. That can be done, or back it up to a different location. But the standard setup is it's hosted by that local computer. So if I was interested in retrieving the file, easy enough to do. Click retrieve. It tells me the cartridge is on. If that's not the online cartridge, I'll retrieve that from the shelf and then just select the destination for it to be retrieved to. Right, I just go to if I wanted to go to my local Macintosh, select that and go and retrieve. Another interesting feature is play original. We'll say I need to take a look at this. I'm looking at the proxy. It looks pretty good, but I'm just not sure if it's if exactly what I want. I can play the original. And the way we do that is, in addition to installing Content Manager, we recommend installing Catalyst Browse. So when you play original, what that does is launch Catalyst Browse, and that will be used to play the clip. So Browse is launched, and now we see the full res playback. And of course, you can go full screen on this, and then with audio monitoring on your PC, you would have the full res audio being played also. All right, so that's an example of playing the original. Let's go back to that. Let's play original. All right, so that is an example of browsing and playing a clip. I had several other clips here I just wanted to point out too. I had some 4K ProRes, just a real alphabet soup of files, and just to make the point that the files are archived. They'll be written to a safe, secure archive. Content Manager only makes proxies for the supported file types, but if I was shooting 4K ProRes or Canon RAW, this of course could still be used to archive those clips. We just wouldn't have proxies to view. So we would be able to search by name or by other metadata within Content Manager. And on the topic of supported files, what we should do is just, if there's any doubt, we can look at the help file, and in the appendix, we have supported file formats. So as you can see, we've got a list of codecs, the containers that are supported, whether it's standard def, high def, XAVC, 4K, 4K XAVC, XAVCS are all supported. AVC HD, all right, HDV. On the Mac, ProRes is supported at different resolutions, up to 4K, up to 5K actually. And then DNX HD is supported on both the PC and the Mac in HD formats, HD 1080 and 720p. All right, so back to Content Manager. All right, so let's continue on a few final thoughts and features of the browse screen. So I'm browsing an offline cartridge, and what I didn't show you earlier was that you could browse by a tile view, by thumbnail. You can browse by a poster frame plus a periodic thumbnail. So this is that every 10-second periodic thumbnail that's put in. And this is a quick way to browse a clip without actually having to play it. So you can quickly scan, especially long clips, or just browse by file name in a flat view if the file and folder names are of more importance than the actual thumbnails and content. You can just browse by file and folder name. So there are a couple of different ways to browse. What you also have in the browse page is a way to print a label for the cartridge. So there are several templates with the cartridge name, and several templates here that you can choose from to print the cartridge. So you're looking at template 1. Template 2 has a listing of some of the files. Template 3 has a little different arrangement of that information. So that's a print label. And then on this pull down menu here is a couple of other interesting options. One is edit metadata. So this is edit metadata for the cartridge. So here you can rename the cartridge, give it a few other global metadata tags for the cartridge itself, description, and then you can also choose an image for the cartridge. So this will be when you print a label, this will be the image that goes on the cartridge instead of the standard cartridge image. All right, so that's edit metadata. export file list. This is a way, again, for the selected cartridge, exporting either an XML file with the XL or XSLT style sheet. So these are the choices, either simply a CSV or a more detailed XML. The export can be for all files or just selected files within the selection, within the screen, and of course the metadata. So the file list is something that is, as you see, is sent as a zip file to your downloads folder. All right, so that's if you need to bring the contents into your own spreadsheet program. Delete will only delete proxies from the system. It'll never delete files from the archive. There's no way we have within Content Manager to delete an archive. So this just deletes the appearance of thumbnails within the within Content Manager. So one final item for an online cartridge. So I'm choosing an online cartridge. I've got another option here for exporting metadata. So what this does is export the metadata, meaning the proxy video and any metadata that I entered, any custom metadata, file names, descriptions, that sort of thing. Export metadata of the cartridge. So you have a confirmation, do you want to export the metadata to this cartridge? So I'm backing up the metadata from the local Content Manager server on the local computer to the cartridge itself. So the cartridge is basically self-describing. It's got all of its metadata contained there. So when I click yes, it'll collect all the metadata and then put that into a file in the root of the cartridge. It is a hidden file, but when you if you were to bring this cartridge to another version of Content Manager running, or another separate content management system, Content Manager, it would sense that there's the hidden file in the root folder and would prompt you to import the database for that cartridge, rather than reconstructing it. You can reconstruct the database by rereading the files and creating proxies, but the metadata that you may have put in that's custom would not be there. It would remain with the local Content Manager software that you originally used. All right, so the file's been written successfully and that process is completed. From Browse, one other item here, if I look at all files, if I browse by all files and by MXF, this might be something a little more practical to do for all of your media clips, as opposed to, as opposed to filtering out the XMLs. When you're looking at a screen like this, again, you can use the different views. But what I wanted to show you was a few other items here. And for a selected file, so if I go to select mode, where I have a little checkbox, I can select a file and either edit metadata for that particular clip. So this will bring me up to an edit metadata screen. So here I can put in my my comment here, and if I wanted to add any custom fields, custom metadata fields, I would click add. I can use either one of the standard fields, or I can add another field of my own, director, and I can put in a name and save that. So that would be added as a metadata field. In addition, if I wanted to batch edit metadata, and this might be useful, of course, for multi-camera shoot or multi-day shoot, I can select several clips, select edit metadata again, and now I'll be editing in batch mode. So anything I put in here would be a batch batch edited metadata. Furthermore, I pointed out earlier a related file tab in the browser. So if I use this checkbox, I'll relate these three files, and I'll just put a comment in here saying, with related selected. And if I save that, those three files are now related. So if I go to search, so we'll say I went to a search screen and I wanted to search by related. Right, these three clips come up, and further, when I click on the clip, right, I'm in the file details and I have this related files tab. The other two clips are there and I can easily see them just by clicking on their names. So they're sort of traveling together as I search them and use those. All right, so that's an example of that related field. All right, so there you have it. There's a few more items on Browse, but that's a basic walkthrough of Content Manager. If you've got any questions, please contact your Sony representative. Thanks for joining me.